Hi, this is Shep Hyken, customer service and experience expert, with a little bit of commentary on some headlines that are being made today, and they're showing up on CNBC, on Market Watch, on New York Times, numerous places. And this is very sad news that United Airlines is apologizing for a dog that died after being put in the overhead bin. Now, people are bringing their dogs on. They're bringing them on as service dogs. They have their little red vests, and they typically sit at the feet of the passenger. Some people bring their dogs on, and they may even pay to bring the dogs on in a little carrier, like a little shoulder bag for a small dog, and there's vents for the dog so the dog can breathe, the dog can look outside, and they're used to being carried around in these bags. Well, apparently, a passenger said that the flight attendant instructed, I'm reading this off the article, instructed the woman to put the bag containing the dog into an overhead bin. Now, I just can't imagine that you would place a live animal into an overhead bin. It gets, obviously, it's a very small space, it's a confined space, it's a very dark space. And not only that, it's a very warm space, because underneath the overhead bins are all the electrical lights and the flight attendant call button and the air, the unit that you can turn on the air and have a little air blowing on you. So it gets hot in those bins. Anyway, I can only express my sincerest remorse that this has happened. And this is what United spokesperson Charlie Hobart had to say. This is a tragic accident that should never have occurred, as pets should never be placed in the overhead bin. Apparently, the passenger was asked to move the bag because it was sticking out into the aisle, according to a person that is familiar with the incident. That is how it actually reads, a person familiar with the incident. And by the end of the flight, the dog was dead. The woman crying in the airplane aisle on the floor. I can only imagine how horrible she felt, but I also imagine that this was an accident. It happened. Shouldn't have happened. Once again, these are the kinds of things that, to my knowledge, and I did a little bit of research and searching for any other animals, there are animals that have died on airplanes, and many times they pass away and they're in the luggage area, which, by the way, is controlled temperature and pressure. And many times, and this is what the research says, that those animals had some type of pre-existing condition. So it's not like what's happening below the plane is causing that. This is an example of training. Probably never happened before, and my guess is after this, it will not happen again. I'm not picking on United Airlines. It's the last thing I want to do, but boy, they've had a tough time. I mean, a number of years ago, not that many years ago, Dave Carroll wrote a song about his guitar being broken. United breaks guitars. To this date, 17 million people have heard and watched the video with the song on it, United Breaks Guitars by Dave Carroll. That's because when he shipped his guitar underneath the plane and it was broken, United didn't handle it to his satisfaction. So like any musician might do, he wrote a song about it. And then just last year, we had the incident where the passenger was taken off the plane, and in a very physical and somewhat violent way. And again, that's not the kind of thing that happens every day. Should never happen on any airline. But this was just definitely a tragic mistake. I don't know how the airline flight attendants are trained, but I do know this. It's probably not going to happen again, because this is the kind of thing where executives go back. By the way, this isn't just about United Airlines. This is any incident that's a crisis type incident. And by the way, what makes this a crisis, everything that happened about it is a crisis, but what makes this worse is it becomes a public relations nightmare for any company when this type of thing happens. But what has to happen is several things. Number one, immediately, and it looks like they've already done this, they've apologized and acknowledged the situation. Step 1 and 2, acknowledge that it happened, apologize that it happened. They're discussing what they're going to do. It's not going to bring any resolution to the fact that the pet and the dog has passed away. They can't bring the dog back. What are we going to do to make this as good as we can for this passenger? And I don't know what they can do, but that's what they're probably working on now. And they've obviously accepted some ownership to it. They're checking into it. They're finding out what they can do, and they're acting urgently. So the point is this. it's a crisis. So what we need to do is go back and analyze, how did this happen? Why did it happen? And how can we make sure it never happens again? And the way to do that is through training. The right kind of training will get this done. Now, just last week, United Airlines announced that 30,000 employees, and that's the flight attendants, that's gate agents, people that are frontline facing, are going to be going through compassion training. They're going to put people through a quick course. It's rather robust for the short time it is. I believe it's a 4-hour course that just starts to get the ball rolling on how to be more compassionate with customers. Because let me tell you, travel's not easy. And it's not always the airline's fault. As a matter of fact, most of the time when the flights are delayed, it's not the airline's fault. It's there's air traffic control issues. There's mechanical issues, which, by the way, you can blame that on the airline. But I know this. I would rather find out about a mechanical issue when I'm on the ground than up in the air when they find out, oh my gosh, something's not working. So I'm okay with being delayed for mechanical issues, especially ones that are life-threatening. I mean, come on. And what else? Weather. Airlines, any airline is not in charge of the weather. And when weather happens, it's not safe to fly. And I totally get that sometimes we're going to be disrupted by weather. But when there's something that is in control of the airline or any company for that matter, they need to do what they can, sit down, debrief, and make sure it never happens again. So I'm sharing this information and talking about this. I know it's a tragic incident for the passenger, and I would imagine that there's a lot of sadness on behalf and compassion on behalf of the flight attendants that this happened with. So I hope that United, we'll see what happens in the next few days. I know United's already taken some responsibility and stepped up and made their statements, but we'll get to see what happens over the next few days. And hopefully this is the type of thing that will never happen again. So thank you all for watching. This is Shep Hyken, and as I always do at the end of every post, always be amazing.